Hey, what's up, everybody? Adam here. So I was on Instagram today and I saw this photo. So this was done by Brandon's Landscaping. So shout out to him. I reached out and asked him if I could use it in the training. Basically, what I wanted to do was just go through how to draw this out, because that's one of the things that's important in the hardscape industry. We went over doing, borders and double borders and maybe an inlay and stuff like that. But how about just regular straight up custom patterns like this? This is a Teco and it's called, let me see, West Mount. So this is their West Mount. It's 2 3/8 by 9 7/16. All right. So that's the measurement that we need to go in and actually draw this. We're just going to start with a shape, right? So we're just going to go to the origin point. Always start in the origin point. Let's actually set things up here. Parallel projection, standard views top. Let me fix my little, all right, so you guys can see okay. And then let's just go back, hold shift, snap again to the origin. So there's our rectangle. So what I'm going to do is turn it into a component. Let's just hit G on the keyboard and we could call this West Mount Paver. All right, so there's our West Mount Paver. Now let's look back at the pattern here. And the one thing we can do sometimes, if you jump over into Photoshop, you can straighten this out and it would give you something to maybe even bring into SketchUp to trace over or to lay your shapes on top of. Now, if you don't have Photoshop, here is a good free alternative. This is called Photopea, and this is in a web browser. So it's photopea.com. All I did was open this up in here, and this is how it came in. So then we're going to go to Edit, Free Transform. Okay. So now we're just going to come up here, grab this corner, hold Control, and just kind of stretch it out like this. So we're going to try to put the corner of the little slab here, the paver pattern that we're drawing. Let's try to put it on all four corners. So I'm just holding Control still. And you might need to zoom out a little bit. You can hold Alt and use a scroll wheel to zoom out. So we're just kind of trying to line this up. Obviously, it was a little bit angled. Now, you can see down here that's off a little bit. So these pavers are starting to come in. So let's go back to Free Transform. Okay. So could also go File, New, type a square in by doing like 1000 for the width and then 1000 for the height. And just say Create. And now I'm going to come back here, hit Control A and then Control C. Now let's go back here and Control V. Okay, so that's what I thought. I didn't think it looked square. So now let's go back to Free Transform. I'm going to hold Alt and drag it in a little bit to do both sides. And then I'll do Alt here to kind of stretch it. So we can also bring the ruler down and kind of mark center in both directions, which is kind of the center of the transform handle. And it's a little off, but it's not too bad. Something like that. And we can crop it again. Just a little bit there. Let me see. There. Whatever. Let's call that good. And let's just save that out. So we're going to export actually as a JPEG. Let's turn the quality up and just hit save pattern. Now I can just drag it into, okay. Let's scale it up. And remember this was 9 7/16. So I'm going to do that with our Ruby Sketch scale tool. I'm going to go from that joint to that joint, and I'm going to type 9 space 7/16. All right, so now it should be pretty close. Looks like maybe we can make our paver a little more narrow to just match. So I'm just going to hold Control and scale about center, something like that. So that if we would sit that and position that right in there, right about there. Okay, that's not bad. Now what I'm going to do is just use the image to go through and set this up. Okay, so let's just do the outside first. And let's make sure. All right, so I'm going to just place this, and then I'm going to use the rotate tool. I'm going to grab that corner right there, and then we're going to come grab this corner and lift it up like this, but we're going to tap Control, and that'll stand it up. All right, so now let's just snap it to the origin, and see, now it looks a little bit too thin. But oh, actually, we need to push our whole image over a little bit like that. Now we should be better to snap to the origin. Just kind of position our image a little bit. We can go to X-ray mode again if you want. And let's just bring a copy up. Okay, so let's go 5 more, 5x. Okay, let's go to the top and let's rotate this from here. And just go to this line, tap Control, and rotate it up. And we can look and it says 90 degrees. Perfect. Now let's grab that corner and then snap it to this corner after tapping Control. And now let's do 5x again. And we're going to do the same thing here. I'm going to grab this corner with the rotate tool. So just call the rotate tool, make sure it's blue. Click on that corner, come around, tap Control, and then get to 90 degrees and click again. Okay, so the same thing here. And now let's go 5x. Okay, so now rotate around 90 degrees and then come across like this, 5x. And we can delete this other one. And look, perfectly aligned, everything matched up perfectly. So now let's go in and do it again. So Control to make a copy. Okay. So actually we're going to come from this corner like that. And let's go like that and go 5x. Okay. So there's a short piece in there. So let's bring this one over and then move that over as a copy. And then we can fill this short piece. For now, let's just scale this down. Okay, it'll still be a component, but it's just scaled. You just have to be careful with that because that will make this, the texture that we applied to it will then be actually like compressed. All right, so let's grab this one from this corner because that's where we're going to snap it. Snap it to there. And then let's just follow our way down. And like that. And now scale that in. So these are all still components. You can see we're up to 48 in the model. And let's just keep going here. We're almost done building the outer border. Have our outer banding, kind of a triple little running bond around the outside. And now we have something very similar here through both sides. All right, so all we're going to do is just lay them out as they are. And let's go to, oh, there's the midpoint. So let's rotate this down 90. And now I can bring it down. Perfect. And we're going to end up bringing another copy to there. And then another copy like that. And then we'll just have a little piece in here that we can scale down. And let's just make a copy here. Copy here. Copy here. And then grab this little piece and bring it down like this. Okay. And now let's do the middle piece in the middle. And bring both of those down like that. All right, so now I'm going to use something called the mirror tool, which we haven't really talked about much, but it will become a big part of your workflow as you get more experienced and get through the training. So I use the mirror tool from Curic. It's my favorite one out of the 4 or 5 different ones out there as plugins. So here it is hiding. All right, so with Curic Mirror, what's cool, I can select the things that I want to mirror, which is basically all of this. And now I can call the plugin, and I'm going to go down to where I want to mirror it from, which is this point right here. So it's kind of like midway between here, and that's going to mirror it around. So I could tap Control, make sure it's a copy, click once. Oops, not click once. I want to click and drag. Okay, so we're going to click and drag. And now I can actually bring this and mirror it like that. And I did not tap Control, so it didn't make a copy, but definitely get the idea. Tap Control this time, drag a copy out like that. And actually just lift these up a little bit, and now we can do is just come up here and grab one of these. Bring it down, tap Control, and we're just going to snap it in there, and snap another one on this side. And we'll go back to this one. We're going to grab it from this corner, tap Control, snap it there. All right, so no gaps anywhere. And now all we have left is the 45, okay? All right, so let's just pull one of these up, and then let's just rotate it up and type 45, enter. Okay, so there it's on a true 45. And what I think I'm going to do is just move it over here. And what we can do is actually explode this. But first, before I explode it, I'm just going to lay these out. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's just do 4. That way we have enough to cover it. And let's just grab all of these and stagger a copy like this to the midpoint above it. So we're grabbing it down here, tapping Control, and then snapping it to the midpoint. Okay. So now I'm going to grab all of these, and I'm going to grab a tape measure and just put a little construction guide there. So now I'm going to move this up, but I'm going to move it up and hold Shift. So it's actually locked on this edge or this guide. Holding Shift, and now I'm just going to snap it right there. Okay. So now I can do 4x, something like that. should be wide enough. Say, just to be on the safe side, let's drop another construction guide there, and let's just move this whole thing down. Now it's definitely big enough. Okay. And now I'm going to delete those guides, and I'm going to explode all this. So let's just grab it all, right click, and go to explode. All right. So now what we need to do is get our square here. So I'm going to come in. We can use the rectangle tool. Just use regular rectangle. Click and drag from one corner to another. And there's our rectangle. Reverse it. Okay, so I'm going to make it into a group. And now I'm going to move it over here and just kind of position it where I want it to be. Somewhere that we can minimize the amount of little sliver pieces, right? I think something like that would work. Okay, so what we can do is an easy way is just going to be explode our box here. And then we would come and drag out and select all of these, holding Control. And now we're going to group them. Okay, we can get the rest as well. And let's group. Right click, make group, and then delete. All right, so we missed a couple spots. Delete those. There. So there's our inlay. Now, another way to do this for the more advanced users is there's a plugin called 2D Bullion that I use all the time, which is an amazing tool. And this is really cool because let me undo back to when this was a group. Okay, so this is still a group. We still have our faces under here that are ungrouped. So I can just select all of this. So the cutout box is a group. Everything else is exploded. And now I can just go trim 2D geometry to face. And actually I have it backwards. Hold on. All of this should be in the group. And then this should be exploded. Okay, so what we want to cut out is in the group, and then the face here is outside of the group. So we want to select both the face and then the group, and then run the plugin, and you can see what happened. Okay, so the same thing would happen for any kind of shape that you had, even if it wasn't that shape. If it was a circle, you could very quickly cut out your pattern into whatever shape you wanted. This could be polygonal shape with many different sides. It doesn't matter. It'll cut it out. So let's do this again. Like that. Now we can group this. Oh, actually, it's grouped from the plugin by default. Make sure all the faces are formed. Everything looks good. And it does. Let's go back to make sure we're in top view again. Now we can just bring this from this corner to here and just drop it in place. All right. So this is where I'd like to use the mirror tool. We have our center point. We have what we want to move. So let's just come to our center. And if we didn't have a good center, we could also just draw an edge like this from that point over and then go up and snap to the very top like that. So that way we know there's our midpoint. Now I can grab this, go to the mirror tool, and I'm going to click here, tap Control. I'm going to click and drag, and we're going to come up like that. And now we could do the same thing here and just mark just because these are pavers and you might not be able to find true center, but now we can select two things, use the mirror tool, find center. Okay, tap control, make sure the alt key, and now click and drag and just kind of rotate this around until it's right where we need it and then let it go. So there we go. It's a little bit off on the bottom there. So these are all the same size. And it's such a small difference that in 3D, you know, it's not like we're actually, it's not that we're milling this, or it's not going into a CNC machine or anything where it's a part that needs to be exact. It just needs to look right. And it does, because it's, you know, we can just scale that and fix that. It's such a small little difference. All right. So now we could take our image that's underneath. Let's just move it out to the side. Is there another one in there? All right. So we've drawn that shape pretty successfully, recreated it, and if you wanted to, it may not line up exactly. You could put this right on top of that. Let's go to camera perspective, and let's actually lift up our image. Right click, explode, and we would have to, first of all, explode everything down here. So let me just move a copy over and do it, because I like the fact that these are all still pretty much component instances around the outside. So we could actually lift these up, and I'm going to do something with that in a second. But here, if we wanted to take all of this and explode it, we could also now sample. We want to make sure it's in projected texture mode. So if we right click on just the face and go down to texture, we would just want to make sure projected is turned on. Get our paint bucket, hold Alt to sample the texture. You can see that it loaded it in. And now we could triple click down here to pre-select it, go back and select our texture again, and just click down here. And I'll delete that, and look what happened. So it didn't quite line up everywhere because it wasn't a perfect image to begin with, but if it was, that's an option and a way to texture everything as well. So it doesn't quite line up inside of the inlays here. Some of the outside looks good, like this stuff through here looks okay, but I probably wouldn't use that. Okay, so over here, what we can do is now we can come in and maybe add a slight joint. Okay, so we're just going to get in and offset here. Let's just do a little offset because it's going to be doubled whatever we do. So this is a 16th maybe. That sounds good. And now let's push pull with just the regular push pull since we're already in here. And let's just lift this up by a 1/4 inch or so. You could do a 1/2 inch if you wanted. And now you have all of those joints in there. And now we have 4 components here. So let's get inside of this. I'm going to go to View, Component Edit, and turn off or turn on Hide Rest of Model. So we just see these. And now what we would need to do is either get in here and manually go through and offset each one of these. And we could do that. We could set this again to a 16th, just like the other one. Make sure that we have nothing selected. And now we can go through and just double click. And the double click is going to repeat the offset. So just make sure that red indicator is on an edge and then double click. So we could go through and do that everywhere. There are a couple plugins that will also do this. since it's not so big, this isn't such a big deal to go through and just double click. So I just messed that one up. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here and make sure I'm on this face, and then just pull this down and snap it right there so that it matches everything else. And now I should be able to go back to double clicking. Now what we can do is go through and let's select all of the faces. And let's right click and go to make group. Now, everything else is outside the group. We could delete it if we wanted to. Yeah, let's delete it actually. So now we have true joints in there. Okay, so now we can get in, select all. And if we wanted to make them all into individual groups, we could, or the way to do it natively is to go through and just push pull one at a time. So we would do it to the same height as everything else, which was 1/2 inch, and then go and just like with the offset, we would just double click everywhere. But with joint push pull, which was the plugin of the day, the last one, we can just go here to thicken, and let's just click this and bring it up 0.5, enter. Let's go to view edge styles and just turn off edges. So there's no edges on, but we can still see what looks like edges. Let's go to our shadows. Okay. So that is literally just picking up the shadow line in the joint, which makes it look like it actually has a joint. Okay, so even without a texture yet, if I would do a quick test render in, so let's just do V-Ray. Render engines don't necessarily render the edges from SketchUp. So, you know, if we would have put this in here without those edge gaps, you wouldn't see this at all. You would see all the edges in SketchUp, but this would just look like one single uniform face. So you can just see how with some lighting, you know, you start to really pick up that shadow line. And we have no material on here. There's no, if we would add, you know, some kind of material, it would look even better and start to pick up some of the glossiness. And just add some. All right, so even if we zoom out from the top view, now that we have a little bit of light in there, or if we wanted to put an environment dome light in there, just trying to show how much of a difference it makes to have the joints modeled in, and, you know, drawing it out first in 2D and then popping things up, adding the joint in there, and now we've got, you know, texturing this is going to take a little bit more work, but we've, for the most part, recreated that pretty good, I think. Okay, but what we can do is actually come in here with a rectangle and actually make our poly sand. Okay, so we drew out our pattern. Let's come across like this. Now we're just going to snap on this axis, make sure we're flat. All right, so now we can push pull this up to a certain height and give this another color. I just usually start with like a really bright color and then I go and adjust it. But say this was our sand, or if we wanted it to be lighter. So that should start to peek through. So I don't want to get too far into, I do want to show you guys all the texturing stuff, but just not just yet. I don't want to overload the lessons. So this is just a quick addendum video on how to draw out a pattern. Hope you guys found that useful and maybe picked up a couple tips or tricks in there. And you can then apply that to your 2D. And then eventually as we get into 3D, you'll be able to apply it there as well. Anyway, just wanted to leave it there, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.